Hello and welcome to Perspectives. On today's show, as India's Home Minister announces the killing of two key insurgency leaders fighting for the Naxalite rebellion that's now disappearing into submissive non-existence, we ask, is India's brutal stamping down of any dissent against Hindu dominance, whether it's J&K's Muslims, Naxalites or even Sikhs, ironically leading to the inevitable breakup of the nation? And something a little different today, as our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau, has become a bit of a roving reporter. He's out on location today. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to call in due to various technical problems, and probably because he actually doesn't have any reception on his mobile phone. But fingers crossed, he might join us partway through today's show, so do stay tuned anyway in the hope of seeing James. But let's start now with this story about the Naxalite rebellion. Now, the Naxalites, this is something that we have actually covered on the show in detail in the past. And the Naxalites, who are the Naxalites? Our audience might be aware of who they are, but for those who don't, the Naxalites is basically several Maoist, that's communist, oriented and militant insurgent groups that have been sort of collected together under this collective name of Naxalites. And they've operated intermittently in India since the mid-1960s. And more broadly, it's applied to a larger communist insurgency itself. So essentially, they are driven by communist principles. It's an ideological uprising, let's call it. Now, the name itself, Naxalites, derived from the town of Naxalbari, that's in far northern West Bengal state in northeastern India, which was the original centre of a tribal peasant uprising against the local landlords in the mid-1960s. Now, although that original rebellion was suppressed, it became the focus of a number of communist-led separatist movements that sprung up right across remote and often tribal areas across India. At first primarily in northeastern India, but later more widely in other parts of the country. And this rise of Naxalism is very much correspondent to the growth of militant communism in India. And of course, it's been driven by the communist nations of both China and Russia. Now, Naxalite groups generally have claimed to represent, of course, the poorest and most socially marginalised members of Indian society. And of course, notably, that primarily includes the tribal peoples and, of course, the lowest of all castes, the untouchables, the Dalits. And unsurprisingly, they've been drawn to this Naxalite, this communist rebellion, which is, of course, it draws its ideological roots from socialism. So, of course, those who are struggling the most within society are, of course, going to be attracted to it. And they do adhere to this Maoist doctrine of sustained peasant-led revolution. Now, for decades, they've waged this guerrilla warfare against targets such as landlords, business people, politicians, and even security forces themselves. And they've disrupted all sorts of infrastructure by damaging transportation links, communication links, power lines, and so on. But in the process, they've often been able to establish bases of operation in remote forested areas, and that's why they've survived so long. They've managed to sort of flee and escape into these remote rural sort of regions. And Naxalite groups have come to control large territories in many of the states of eastern India. And notably, these include places like Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Orissa and West Bengal. And it's actually become what's known as the Red Corridor. And their influence has spread even wider beyond those areas. Now, often these Naxalite groups have taken over governing functions and provided social services within areas under their control, although they have also been accused of using pretty harsh enforcement tactics. So these guys, they are rebels, they are sort of militants, but they are sort of quite brutal in their own tactics. I suppose they've been forced into such tactics. And national and state governments within India have consistently labelled these Naxalite groups as terrorist organisations and declared them to be illegal. Now, of course, I said in the intro that there's been quite a big development in the last couple of days. Now, why am I focusing on the Naxalites? Now, so we have talked about the Naxalites before, because they represent yet another portion of Indian society that is not happy with the structure and the governance of India. Basically, the caste system, which has given India this straitjacket. Technically, the caste system is illegal, but it still very much controls Indian society. At the top of that caste system are these Brahmins, these controlling elite, and then the caste system cascades down with hundreds of different subsets of castes, etc. But down at the bottom, we have the untouchables, the Dalits, amongst a few other sort of lowest caste individuals. And of course, they are these poor people who live in dreadful poverty, and the social infrastructure is designed to keep them there. It's very difficult, if not impossible, for these lowest castes to break out of this terrible situation they find themselves in. And of course, they are therefore drawn. The only solution they have is to try and join these militant groups, just to try and fight back. And I'm just going to let James in. We might have James joining us. Let me just interrupt slightly, and let's see if we can get James on the line. Here he comes. James, are you there? He's just starting, I think. Anyway, we'll come back to James. And anyway, let me go back to what I was sharing. I'll just keep James's potential arrival on screen. Anyway, so of course these the lowest caste people have been drawn in the tribal regions. Those who are most deprived have been drawn to these rebellions, to this rebellion. Here is James. James, welcome back. Can you hear us?
I can hear you, Angus. My apologies. I am in the middle of nowhere, and I swear there was a sign that said nowhere.
I've been there before myself. Well, welcome back,
There you go.
James.
Between wildfires and wildlife, I was a little delayed on the highway here.
Not a problem, James. Well, I'm just partway through talking about the Naxalite rebellion, so I'll finish off the Naxalites, and then we'll come back to you if you want to stay tuned. So I'm just going to continue now.
Sounds like a plan.
Indeed. So, as I was saying, the lowest caste and those who are most deeply deprived have been drawn to this rebellion, this Naxalite rebellion, which is why it's pertained for so long. But of course, it's the Indian government have been absolutely brutal against this rebellion, against this militant. Now, I'm not saying the rights and wrongs of their methods, their methodology. Of course, they have been quite violent in this uprising. And of course, we are no supporters of terrorism or violence, etc. But the point is, there is a very large percentage of Indian people who are very unhappy with their lot in life. They're very unhappy with their governance. And so they have joined this rebellion. And thus, they have found themselves as enemies of the state. And that really is, I suppose, very reminiscent of the 1980s and the 1990s in the Punjab. So, of course, this will resonate with a lot of our audience. Now, Amit Shah did announce yesterday, he made this announcement. Today, our security forces have achieved another major victory against the Naxalites in the Abujamad region of Narayanpur along the Maharashtra-Chhattisgarh border. Our forces eliminated 2 Central Committee member Naxal leaders. And the security forces are systematically dismantling the top leadership of the Naxals, breaking the backbone of Red Terror. And again, he uses this word Red Terror. And it's a very evocative, very emotive language that is used here, very deliberately. And there's been also a lot on social media about this. It's rallied around this sort of I would say that the extremists, the nationalists have rallied around this. They love Amit Shah. He is very much a representative of this Hindutva ideology now governing India. And for example, this was posted up. 22 more Naxalites eliminated in Chhattisgarh, takes the tally for this year up to 100 plus Naxals. And then 104 Naxalites have been eliminated by the security forces in just 3 months. Motabai, and Motabai is a Gujarati word, I understand, for Amit Shah, the Home Minister, has promised a Naxal-free India by March 2026. And then the Home Ministry itself did actually post up this picture, giving a clue as to how successful this campaign against the Naxalites have been. So it says, under the Modi government, the left-wing extremists affected districts have dropped from 182 in 2013, so 12 years later, to just 18, marking the government's resolve towards strengthening India's internal security and decisively tackling a decades-old issue. So you can see this red corridor in 2013, how effective and how widespread this Naxalite feeling was. These are the districts controlled by the Naxalites, and it's a huge area, as you can see, right across sort of the eastern swathe of India. But since India's government, the BJP government, has brutally stamped down on them, literally with brute force, and sent in the military, and they've just been murdering these Naxalites in large numbers over the years. And you can see now it's just down to just a few small pockets, primarily in eastern India. And I'm just going to go through a few of the comments that followed this announcement by Amit Shah, the Home Minister, because it's always very useful to look at the comments on Twitter, for example, X, just to get a flavour of how the average, well, it's not the average Indian, but just get a flavour of how Indians, generally speaking, feel about this. Now, of course, you tend to get most of these comments come from the extremists, the nationalists, the right wing, the Hindutva, but you do get the odd brave soul who wades in with just saying, "Hang on a second, this is not right." But just to give you a clue of some of the feelings of Indians behind this announcement. This guy, Dr. Sumit Shah, I don't know who Dr. Sumit Shah is, but one would assume with the name Doctor that he is an educated academic or whatever, or maybe a medical doctor, doesn't know. But he said abrogation of Article 370, that's where the BJP government just ripped up the clause in the Indian constitution that gave J&K, Jammu and Kashmir, its reserve status. They ripped this up so they could wade in and take control of J&K. So the abrogation of Article 370 and the tackling the finishing of Naxalism are the biggest achievements of our Home Minister that even the opposition can't deny. More has happened to curb Naxalism than ever before. In Kashmir, the stone pelters and regular violent protesters are history. Okay, that's fine. A very clear and ambiguous point. Dr. Rajesh Bhatt, another doctor, says, "Great work, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat." Well, what this does point to, and the whole point of me talking about the Naxals and the Naxalites is, okay, even if they were a militant uprising, it was a massive militant uprising. This red corridor was huge. It represented a very large percentage of the Indian population, primarily the lowest caste of India. Now, this uprising existed for one very good reason: inequality, poverty. They were very unhappy. This is a huge portion of the Indian population who was so unhappy with their lot under the Indian government that they were driven to taking up arms and then taking control of their own districts. And you start to see a bit of a parallel here to the Punjab. These people feel underrepresented. Their voice is not there. They have no democratic voice. They have had no choice but to resort to an armed uprising. And it's so big. Look at the Red Corridor. That's how big it was. And the only answer that India had wasn't a democratic answer. It didn't give them a democratic voice. It literally sent in the army and killed them. It sent in brute force and drove them underground. So that's what happened. Now, the sad outcome of this is, of course, it means you've got hundreds of thousands and probably millions of Indians living in deep poverty who have now got absolutely no voice. They have no democratic voice. They have no power. They've just got nothing. They now have to live in unhappiness. What does that mean? You've got this undercurrent of deep dissatisfaction. Yet another area in India with an undercurrent of deep dissatisfaction. Join that with J&K. Join that with Manipur. Join that with Punjab. Join that with Tamil Nadu. You start to see, again, what's happening here across India. All that the BJP government are achieving by doing this is they are driving people in, they're fragmenting India into these groups of people who are just unable to push their agenda. Their own agenda, that for their own interests, is to look after their own selves, their own self-interest. They feel they're being brutally suppressed, oppressed, and they have no democratic voice. That means they are going to push further to break away, for secessionism. Given any opportunity, these people will declare their own independence, as will J&K, as will Punjab, as will Manipur, as will Tamil Nadu. All these other areas will want, given any opportunity, and this is really why we're talking about this, and we've talked often, James, about this catalytic event. There could be one catalytic event. It could even be a small event. And I always refer to the falling of the Soviet Union. It takes one small catalytic event and these dominoes start to fall. And here we have the Red Corridor that doesn't exist now, technically, but it does still exist. These people haven't gone away. Their feelings haven't gone away. The only difference is that map has changed. The control of those districts has gone from the Naxalites back to presumably BJP propped up puppets. In other words, it only takes one catalytic event to reverse this whole thing. And suddenly you can have a very, very different perspective on that map. And there's just a few more comments I just wanted to cover that follow this story. Ravi Kumar was actually one of the few dissenting voices after Amit Shah's announcement. And he said, "This is nothing to boast about. They were never against common people, but for protection of the water, the jungle, the land." This is a warning shot from a very small, timid voice on Twitter saying, look, you people don't realise what this is about. You think it's just a militant uprising, like the Sikhs in the Punjab in the 1980s and 90s. You thought that was just some bunch of terrorists who were fighting just for the sake of fighting. No, they had a genuine cause for problem. And these people, the Naxalites, weren't fighting for anything more than their basic existence. They were fighting, as Ravi Kumar says, for the protection of their own water. And again, you see the parallels with Punjab here, the jungle and their own land. And then, of course, there are lots of other comments. And there was one comment, and unfortunately we don't have time really to get into too much detail, but this is an interesting comment. Deb Kumar Barman said, "Wherever Christianity takes root, an atmosphere of anti-India mindsets built up, mostly among tribal states like Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, Budaland, Chhattisgarh, Andhra, Maharashtra, Telangana, etc." That's an interesting link to the Christians, where the Christians go in. Now, his implication is it's the Christians creating this. I don't know if that's a true cause and effect. Maybe it could be that the Christians start to wake people up to what's going on in India. I don't know, but that was an interesting comment. But then the final comment here: the hinterland Naxals can be defanged by force and positive reinforcement. Yeah, absolutely. So this is what's happened, is that brute force has suppressed this rebellion. Jai Hind, well done to the BJP government. We've won this battle. Have you really? Because there's a warning here. The urban Naxalism is growing at a dangerous rate. It needs to be tackled tactfully. Yeah. In other words, these Naxalites haven't gone away. They're still very much there. They're more dangerous than you actually believe now, because they're in the urban environment. They're not out there in the jungle fighting with old, 1960s and 70s rifles. They're now amongst the urban set. They're amongst you. They are there, and they will fight it a little bit more intelligently. I have no doubt the Naxalites will learn from the Sikhs, and they will learn that, okay, we can't win this battle through brute force. We can't beat this huge military machine of India. But let's do it democratically. Let's do it peacefully. Let's fight it a little bit more intelligently now. These people, as I said, haven't gone away. They are huge in number, and they only need to unite democratically. And a warning to the BJP government and Hindutva: these people will unite eventually. They will learn the same lesson that Sikhs learned. They can't beat you militarily, but they will beat you peacefully and democratically. So, James, I'm encouraged by this, although Amit Shah thinks, and the Hindu nationalists and extremists think they've won a great victory destroying the Red Corridor. All they've done is driven this into a different arena. And this arena, they will be back with a vengeance. They will come back peacefully and democratically, and they will probably beat you. That's my prediction, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And let's not forget how involved India is in the technology and the bots and everything else. So for them to underestimate the power of these other groups when it comes to social media and spreading the word internationally, it's amazing how they think that they're the only ones that can play that technology game. And I think that they are underestimating the opposition to that extent, Angus.
Indeed, absolutely. So, as I say, it's a story that I think we'll just, we'll cover it and keep following it, because this story it doesn't end here. This story doesn't end when the Naxalites have been brutally suppressed. I think there is still a big story to be told in future on this one. Right, James, as time marches on, tell us, where are you? Tell us what you're doing and why you're out in the car.
I'm in the middle of nowhere. As I said earlier, I think there's actually a sign here that says nowhere with a circle in the middle. And so I am actually out in the region of the province, the eastern part of British Columbia, approximately 7 hours from Vancouver, 655 kilometers approximately. And I'm on my way to the Universal Ostrich Farm, where there are 400 ostriches being culled. The RCMP have actually seized the farm, and they have the Canadian Food Inspection Agency workers there as well. And they plan on moving ahead with a cull that actually started with a battle in the courtroom, and this goes back to December of last year. The battle in the courtroom has continued. However, the latest judgments have been in favor of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and it actually has far-reaching implications that are well beyond the borders of British Columbia, well beyond the borders of Canada, because this is an international call policy that goes with the World Food Organization, with the World Health Organization, and so forth. Because they were exposed to the the H5N1 disease variant of the avian influenza, they were ordered culled. And there were 69 birds originally, going back to December and January. That count of those birds that were deceased by the symptoms and the result of the avian influenza. Now, since that time, of mid-January, early February, there have been no real numbers in terms of the deaths, and they still have 400 of those ostriches left. The problem, though, Angus, is actually, very complex, because on one hand, you have a government and an organization that is refusing to allow them to retest the birds to see if they've gained any herd immunity. Now, if they have, then that could be a huge scientific breakthrough to figure out how exactly that is working, because they would have DNA samples from the original birds that tested and that were that died naturally from the disease. So again, I think the benefits there are very heavy. The risks on the other side, though, Angus, as I'm trying to be fair on both sides here, is that the risk is that if they are asymptomatic and either carrying the disease, not showing signs, but they are carrying it and able to pass it on, that is a major concern for the Canadian food supply as well as the international food supply. It also is a concern that because of this aggressive variant, that it does mutate. And I believe we've discussed this several times now. But the mutation could potentially be one that isn't picked up by the current technology. That is a big risk. Now, this particular variant is also proven to be able to cross-transfer between the ostriches or between birds and other animals, such as livestock and swine and other animals. So there's a big concern there that you run the risk of infecting more than just the farm bird population. Now, there have also been issues with the farm not actually following the directives that they were given. We can go right back to the start of it, where 69 birds were ill and some started dying off. Instead of reporting it as they're required by law to do, they started burying these carcasses on the farm. And it was only because of a nosy neighbor calling in the report that the Canadian Food Inspection Agency was brought onto it. Now, these people that are running the farm, wonderful people. I've been watching this since day one. But at the same time, they have a very emotional attachment to these birds. And unfortunately, it is a business. These birds are, technically they are inventory for a business. And when you allow yourself to have that deep connection where you start to feel like these animals are family and everything else, it makes it very, very emotional. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, Angus, because I think that if you have any type of business, whether you're building grommets or building houses or raising livestock, if you do not have a real emotional connection and ethical connection to the business that you're running, then I think that you're doomed for failure anyway. So I think that there has to be a level of emotion that goes with any business. And unfortunately, in this situation, it's not grommets, because grommets, you don't have the real emotional connection to the grommets. It's the process of building the business. It's the workers, it's the environment, all of that. But here you've got, living creatures. So I can, I can just, imagine what they're going through. Now, another concern is the online presence of information. Several months back, Angus, you may recall when I went out to the border crossing to get some information because one of the border guards was being doxxed and falsely accused of crimes by the India government. And they started to harass this individual online, releasing his home information, his residential information, where his family was residing, and so forth. What's happened here is that one of the head investigators and agents for the Canadian Food Inspection Agency apparently made some comments online that a few people took exception with. I haven't yet seen the actual comments, so I'm not going to, elaborate on that. Just that some people took offense to it. And hey, I say things that people take offense to all the time. So whether or not that was the intent, again, I haven't seen the actual report, but I have seen now that the police have been parked outside of his house. They escorted his wife and his children in the home. In the Lower Mainland, and they are under police watch now with police outside their home because of potential threats from online lunatics or other extremists that may go after him as the lead or one of the leads for the Canadian Food Inspection Agency that's on site here where the birds are. So again, it's a very, very interesting matter. It is a very far-reaching one that has even reached the White House in the United States. RFK Jr., as well as Dr. Oz and other billionaires have volunteered to bring those birds down to their ranches in various parts of the U.S. Now, of course, Canada is concerned that if these birds were to be moved to another ranch and they do have any type of variant that's non-detectable at this time with the technology, or if they are carriers and they are and they're taken across the border. Well, now you're making an international spread much more complex in dealing with it. Now, we don't know how these birds originally were infected. Was it a wild bird that was visiting another ranch and then brought the avian flu or that virus to this farm? Or was it maybe a rodent? Or, there's just so many ways that it could be transmitted. And as I said, there is the potential of cross-contamination from species to the ostriches and vice versa. So again, it's a big question here as to how it started. But at the end of the day, one of my concerns is culling 400 ostriches. And if they have indeed developed a herd immunity and they have actually recovered and are not testing positive in any way, shape, or form, then I think that the scientific benefit to research and find out what the cells are or what the DNA analysis is that would indicate why they have recovered, why they were able to fight it off, and how we can learn from that to maybe find vaccines or other ways to treat animals without, having to have these mass culls that just take billions of dollars out of the economy. Let's remember that the egg shortage in the U.S., a big part of that was not because of the fact that, there was magically an egg shortage, that there were no eggs around. It was because of the mass culls of the birds that were laying the eggs, and whether or not that was chickens, whether or roosters, and whatever, because some people eat ostrich eggs too, as far as that goes. But yeah, again, it is a very, very tough situation, Angus, and I was hoping to be there earlier this evening. But again, due to wildfire delays and wildlife delays, I didn't quite make it in time. I'm about 25 minutes away, so we'll have lots of footage for tomorrow night's show, Angus.
Great stuff, James. Well, say stay safe and drive safe. But ultimately, yes, this story really does highlight one big issue we have with the 21st century. It's these global supply chains, and of course, the food industry does supply the global palette, the global demand. I mean, we ship food all around the world on a daily basis. Huge amounts, millions of tons every day are shipped globally from A to B to C to D. And of course, when one part of the world is affected by, if it's bird flu or whatever, it does have a global impact. It really does have this chain of events. And of course, when trade deals are set up, whether it's between India and the West or vice versa or whatever, of course, we have to take into account these factors because, of course, these different nations, we all have different rules and regulations on how we internally control control things like bird flu, and our regulations might not match those in another part of the world that we potentially ship to, or vice versa. And so it creates all these sorts of commercial tensions and legal tensions and problems. And yeah, the whole bird flu issue, again, we've been hit by it in the past a lot, regularly here in the UK. And it's a terrible, tragic situation because, of course, because the commercial pressures are so high, is that the governments oblige farmers to cull huge flocks as soon as the virus is detected. Doesn't matter, cull the flock because the impact on the global food chain is too great. So we find these poor farmers who, as you say, are emotionally attached to their flocks. These are living creatures at the end of the day. They are obliged to cull hundreds, if not thousands, and sometimes hundreds of thousands of their birds that they've been growing since they were chicks from eggs. It's tragic, all for the very reasons of ensuring regulations are met. It's a brutal industry in many ways, and as I say, it's all linked to this global supply chain, James. So yeah, it's I say there are no winners in all this, and ultimately the only winner is the grand old dollar, as always.
Absolutely, and that's what it comes down to. And I mean, my company actually, Angus, I'm not sure if we've discussed it before or not, but we are working on a combination technology, AI, and media solution to early detection of the H5N1 that will then be transferable to other animals and other illnesses as well. If anybody's interested in looking that up, you can go to propixcanada.com/agtech, which is short for agriculture technology. And you can find out a lot more about the research and the programs that we're doing on my company's end. But again, with that said, Angus, it is just a horrific event that is, impacting, and it will impact the international community as well, especially how the Canadian government and moving forward, if they call or if they give a last minute reprieve. I mean, it's already been through almost every step of the court process here in Canada. And again, it is something that they have said has to happen. But, it's heartbreaking because this particular farm has spent decades building up a very strong, healthy, and robust population. And to see them lose it all overnight is really a shame. And just final word, Angus, we actually had the exclusive. Nobody else is reporting or even realized that this top food inspection individual had police protection and that his house is under guard and his family. So there you go. We had a true Satledge exclusive and breaking news tonight.
Excellent. Well done on that, James. Well done indeed. And so the very phrase bird flu, the words bird flu is enough to strike fear into the hearts of so many farmers, not just here in the UK, but around the world. So anyway, let's move on, James. And we're going to go on to our comments section. And we've got a few comments to go through. To be fairly quick on these. But Blue Robe starts us off. This was about the terrible rape in Oldbury here in the UK. And this is a comment about the language used. She was raped, literally. What do you mean by assaulted? She was brutally raped. Well, what I would say is technically, legally speaking, rape is a sexual assault. It's just that if you felt offended by me just calling it an assault, technically, legally, it is an assault. But yes, it is absolutely, of course, it's a brutal rape. It's an absolutely outrageous, unforgivable criminal act, and it goes beyond criminal. It's just, it just sinks to the lowest levels. So anyway, apologies to you, Blue Robe, if you felt that I certainly wasn't making light of it, just demoting it to a simple sexual assault. Of course, it was a rape, but as I say, legally, technically, it is still a sexual assault. So let's just clear that up for you. But Govinda Saund.
And if I can just add a quick one to that, Angus, is that we have to be careful about how many times we use certain words in the program and in the show, because even using certain words once pushes us way down the algorithm because it becomes a sensitive topic and a sensitive episode by the algorithm standards. So we have to be careful. If we say it too many times, then the episode will end up with a couple hundred viewers as opposed to 1,000 or more, and that impacts our reach. So we have to be careful of that as well.
That's actually a very good point, a very interesting point, actually. So we'll have to keep that in mind. We might need some code words for certain things we talk about. So maybe our audience...
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous for a news program to have to censor some of the words that they say, but it's in the overall scope of trying to protect children and others online from predators or things that just don't belong online. So it's trying to keep that delicate balance, and that's why a lot of people call it grape. And I'm thinking, no, it's not seedless. It just drives me nuts when people, when you have to do that for the algorithms.
It's crazy. Well, maybe our audience can make some suggestions for code words we can use for certain things. Anyway, but Govinda Sond follows the same theme, saying, "Yeah, look, this is what's happening even in India." And again, it's a subject we talk regularly about: is this dreadful treatment of women at all levels, whether it's through sexual assault or through just simple treatment day to day. As women and girls are treated second class, even third class citizens, particularly if you're a Dalit girl. Those poor ladies have the most dreadful time trying to survive day to day in India. But yeah, as you rightly say, and as a lol peopleism also follows up, is that the Sikh people, the community, is under attack. It's under attack from far right groups back home in India by the Indian government for the last 5 decades, and as lol peopleism says, we're being treated as an escape route to all hate. Of course, yeah, because the BJP, it's very easy to unite your followers by finding the bogeyman, the bad people. Who can we target that we can unite our own followers behind, so that they all join us and support us? And let's find somebody to attack. Well, let's find the most vulnerable in society. Well, first of all, there's the lowest caste, the Dalits, etc. But there's also the Sikhs. They're always a good community to have a go at, because relatively speaking, the smaller number, and they're very easy to attack from the BJP side. So this is why, James, I think the poor Sikhs find themselves as a target regularly.
Absolutely. And when let's not underestimate the power of the psychology, is that when the BJP attacks the Sikhs, when they attack the Dalits, when they attack the Christians and the Muslims, whoever they're attacking, it's also a mental warfare against the Hindus that actually have broken away from the Hindutva ideology or the extremist ideologies that some carry. They've broken away from that and are more open to the modern world. And of course, that is a threat to Modi and the BJP as well. So, of course, when they are making an example by using the other minority groups, they are, in fact, also trying to scare their own Hindu population as well.
Indeed, yeah, the psychology of politics.
Yeah.
Amakara, yes, thank you for your comment. Yes, you were saying that you were laughing with me, not at me. This is referring, James, when I went off air a few days ago, and you could hear my bad language in the background. Yes, Amakara, I knew you were just laughing with us, because we're all having a bit of a laugh and a joke as we still try to come to grips with all the buttons to press. And I think even today, James, I think we've done extremely well. Bear in mind, we've never done a remote location shoot, and I think touchwood so far we seem to have done all right with it.
No, we did from Revelstoke at the Sikh Gurdwara historic location a few years ago.
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. So this isn't the first time, but this is the first time with the new studio.
But I actually had a real good signal there and proper lighting, as opposed to here. I'm sitting in the front seat in the middle. There's bears and wild animals and snakes and shit around here. So I'm sitting in the vehicle at this location.
Well, Jay, if we see a bear's head appear at your window, we give you full permission to put your foot down and go. So,
I've got the car turned off, so I didn't get background noise, so I'll have to punch him in the nose.
And Cool Core says, great show, informative show as usual. Thank you, Cool Dip. And you say, thanks for mentioning my comments. Well, of course we couldn't do this show without you all. So we couldn't do this part, certainly this part of the show, without your comments. So if you want to be featured in the comment section, just send us an interesting comment, something that's interesting to talk about. We'd be delighted to talk about your comments. So thank you for your contributions, Cool Dip. Much appreciated. And Avatar Dylan says, nice one, Angus. Getting a bit technical in that. Oh, yes, with James on screen. Is this the future? Take care and keep up the good work. Amazing. Thanks. Well, yes, hopefully this is the future. We are hopefully coming to grips with the studio. Hopefully it's starting to look a little bit more professional, and the mistakes are getting less and less. And Harjeet Rosha follows up with, hello, my congratulations for the new setup. You look great and blend with the background. It looks like you drank or ate the soup of those pink flowers in the background. Well, I just today, as you all note, let's see if I can just do this. You will note that today the flowers are blue. This is how good the new studio is. I can change the colour of these flowers to whatever colour you want. So today I've done it blue, especially for you, Harjeet Rosha, to celebrate your comment, just to say, yeah, look how great the new studio is. And it's heartening to see James opening a new side business as a fruit and vegetable seller. God bless you both. Well, God bless you, Harjeet Rosha. I think that was in reference to your wonderful backdrop you had there the other day, James.
Absolutely. It's the fall harvest season. I had to change it up a little.
Indeed, wasn't it marvellous? A great backdrop there. Maybe we'll have the backdrop of the week. Well, maybe we'll change it weekly. We'll see. And then to finish off today's show.
And you got to admit, though, it does look better than the one I've got tonight in the car.
This is more about action shots, James. This proves we are a show with
That's
action
right.
shots and remote locations. But talking of which, we must bring the show to a close, and we'll finish up with two comments, one from Baljeet Kaur and one from Sats. Thanks for supporting Khalistan. Why wouldn't we? Who couldn't support Khalistan? The concept
Absolutely.
makes an awful lot of sense. And Khalistan Zindabad, thank you both, love and peace. And that's a great way to finish the show. Love and peace. And we send love and peace to all our audience. And thank you for all your support. Thanks for all the comments. Do keep them coming. We really do appreciate them. Don't forget, you can message us directly at message@satludgetv.com. There you go. Press a button and it appears as if by magic. So do email us directly. Oh, and a quick message to one of our correspondents who has emailed us. You know who you are, who sent the petition for the anti-Sikh hate crime. Unfortunately, you didn't send the link. Please send the link. I couldn't find it when I searched it myself. You know who you are. If you could please email again and this time send the link. And I did try and reply, but it bounced back. But anyway. But yes, please do email us if you've got anything that you want to bring to our attention, as many of you have been doing. Much appreciated. But that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will hopefully see you next time.